Professional liability coverage. So this is also known as errors and omissions insurance. Since this is a liability policy, remember, anytime we hear the word liability coverage or liability policy, it's talking about paying for the damages done to other people. But the difference between general liability and professional liability is professional liability is not talking about the physical component. So a really good example of a professional liability or errors and omissions claim would be I, as an insurance agent, say someone calls in and says, "Hey, Evan, I would like to change my insurance from $500,000 to $1 million in coverage." And I said, "Great, let me go ahead and make that change for you." And then I forget to make that change. Say I take another call as soon as I hang up, and I just neglect and forget, make a mistake, make an error, and just don't do that. And then they file a claim that's a $750,000 claim, but they don't have the right coverage because their coverage was never updated to only have $500,000 in coverage. That would result in them not having all the coverage they need. So what would happen is they would sue me for making a mistake, and then my professional liability policy would enter in and pay for that mistake. So like the example I just gave says, is it's as a result of making mistakes, forgetting to do something that you were supposed to do, omitting to, the errors and omissions, right? But also there is a failure to uphold contractual obligations. This is an interesting one. If you are a contract worker, there will be express deliverables, which we'll get into a little bit later, that will say, hey, you're supposed to do this thing by this date. If you fail to deliver on that and it ends up costing your client or your customer money, they can file suit against you, and a professional liability policy or errors and omissions insurance would take care of that cost. So this type of policy provides coverage for attorney fees and damages that would end up being awarded in a suit. So we talked a little bit already about the differences between general liability, and before we talked about blue collar versus white collar. This policy is a little bit flipped on its head, whereas the white collar professions such as accountants, attorneys, consultants, their professional liability costs will be much higher because it's much more likely that they're going to make this type of a mistake. They're not normally going to make ones that result in injuring someone or damaging their property. But if an accountant forgets to file the taxes on the right time, or makes a mistake on someone's taxes, and then that person is then audited and it costs them money and all that stuff, they're going to end up filing a suit, and professional liability coverage would pay for those damages. So that's the difference between general liability. We've talked a lot about general liabilities associated with physical. This is more associated with non-physical damages. However, this type of policy can also cover professions such as architects, engineers, and physicians from claims of negligence that do result in physical losses. I mean, imagine if you were an architect and you were designing a building and then that building collapsed and there was property damage and people got hurt. In that case, since my profession as an architect would result in physical damages, my professional liability policy would step in because really my work has injured someone. And that's kind of the key with professional liability. My work, what I have produced, what I have done from a professional standpoint has injured someone. I did a bad job architecting. I did a bad job engineering. I did a bad job being a physician, and I made a mistake during the surgery. So it's, again, still about mistakes and errors of a professional nature. And for those types of professions, they can result in physical losses.